I hated to eat. First off, in Cuba, eating meant sitting in front of a plate of mashed malanga. Have you ever even heard of malanga? No, there's a reason. You've heard of potatoes, right? There's a reason. Potatoes taste good. Malanga is the ugly tasting cousin. You mash it, but it never looks right. It comes out gray. That is actually possible. Gray food. I ate gray food in Cuba. Now imagine mashed malanga without butter and barely any salt. My mom would sit my cousin Sarah and me down for lunch, where she would have to shape the mashed malanga into the body of a man or a ship or an alien. Edible malanga sculptures. Anything to take our minds and taste buds away from the reality, the cold, hard, crushing truth that because we lived in Cuba and this was a communist country where each family had a ration book, we would eat malanga. There's a reason you've never heard of ration books, and trust me, you want to keep it that way. The communist motto in Cuba was socialism or death. More like socialism or malanga. Better, socialism is malanga. My mother also had a motto, masticate and swallow. She would stand over me, her commanding will, ready to force the malanga down my windpipe if I resisted the other pathway beginning at my mouth. I hated to eat. Mastica y traga, she would say. She didn't scream. She just repeated the slogan. I cried, but it never stopped her. She wanted me healthy and fat and full of malanga because the only other choice of a meal was sugar water. Sugar water is tastier, but far less nutritious than malanga. Because malanga was so disgusting, it also made me hate my cousin Sarah. She would lie about eating her malanga, heap it on my plate while my eyes filled with tears. Mom, she put her mouth, masticate and swallow. Sarah did other things to me, like placing a nail on my seat and pushing me around at school and spitting water at me at restaurants. Don't worry, I totally love her today. So she'd call me bedwetter and make fun of me because I wore glasses and big shoes, 2 sizes too big. I could overlook all of that, but the malanga gifts were unforgivable. You're wondering why my mom would use such a complicated word like masticate. Couldn't she simply say chew? But in Spanish, masticar is the word for chew, and masticate is masticar. My mom wasn't building my vocabulary. She was imposing her will on her son. My mom was big on imposing her will. She had another motto which she enjoyed throwing around. When I sobbed and asked the obvious, why do I have to eat malanga? I hate malanga. Sob, sob. Do you want to know why? She asked. I'd fall for it. Walked right into it. Why? I replied. Because aquí la que manda es menda, she answered. That meant here she was the boss. She was handing out the orders and I had to follow the orders and eat the malanga. So I lived most of my childhood in Cuba being force-fed. It wasn't just malanga, it was force fabada, a Spanish-style white bean soup. It was liver, horse meat, Russian canned meat, boiled boniato, and above all, I had to like these foods. Because after my mother would order me to masticate and swallow, she felt obligated to remind me that she made the rules, saying, after all, the food tastes good, so I don't know what your problem is. My cousin escaped my mother's food obsessions because my mother wasn't Sarah's mother and could not well impose her will on a child who was not hers. At the same time, my mom swore that if she had it her way, Sara would be eating malanga just like you. So would Fernandito and Israel and Griselita and the rest of the neighborhood kids. That girl's so skinny, my mom would say. If someone doesn't do something soon, something will happen to her. Please, dear God, don't let malanga happen to her. Anything else is fine. Starvation, skin boils, firing squad, but not malanga. My mother was not only obsessive about food, she was also obsessive about medicines. For a period of what felt like 100 years, she gave me daily toques de garganta, translated roughly as touches to the throat, which cured me of tonsillitis. The curing process involved wrapping her finger with thick gauze and covering it with iodine and reaching in and touching my throat. This was a daily gagging routine. She was obsessive about taking walks, going to churches to pray by touching the feet of the saints. She was obsessive about holding my hand in the street so I would not get run over. She obsessed with my schooling. I was the youngest kid in first grade at age 5. I do have to admit, Her obsession was what got us visas to leave Cuba and move to New Jersey. Her persistence got us a visa out when everyone else in the neighborhood was left behind in Cuba, drinking sugar water and eating malanga.